We live? This is a little low. That's better. That- Okay, are we ready to admit all? Okay. Oh, right. I have the chat open this time. It's novel. I'm coming up with new ideas every time. Hi, Lou. Good morning. Just for all of you who know, hi, Barbara. I like the waves. But I like, oh, hi, Betsy. That wasn't a wave. That was you just adjusting your camera. But good enough. Lou, Lou Belcher is the reason that this workshop exists, just so you know. That's how that works. Lou said, I want a flower workshop. And I was like, all right, Lou.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Cheers.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, let's go ahead. Go ahead and mute all, Dave, and we'll then we can drop people back on.
That they have to experience those types of impacts. That's another day where they're considering raising prices on you.
You'll need to unmute.
Good morning. Good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. Some of you might even be turning over in your beds at what I think is what 3 o'clock in Australia right now. So I know there's a few from down under who have been brave enough to tune in from time to time. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third and final installment of this free Abstracting the Floral Workshop. This is the day that I titillate you with offers for the full Abstracting the Floral Workshop, which I think is pretty powerful. I know it's powerful, and I've heard that confirmation from a lot of my students too, so that's pretty exciting. But we're not there yet. So just good morning, welcome, and oh, I love this. Look at this. Let's see, Mutnzini, South Africa, New York, Calgary, Scotland. This is great. Is Lillette Butler, are you little, there's a, what's the name here? Let me just double check. There's a name on one of these adjustments. Little Brambles? Is that possible? I'm just trying to do some detective work here. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming. Very excited to be here myself. And on this final day of the Abstracting the Floral Free Workshop, I just want to thank you all very specifically for your contributions. If you have signed up for the 8 Paint Infinite Arts Facebook page, no doubt you have seen all of the flowers bouncing around on that page, and it's incredible to me. It's always incredible how much energy this workshop creates. There are almost 4,500 people signed up for this workshop, and so even though this calls, yeah, I know. This call is quite a few of you, but the amount of people that actually tune in, you know, whether they review the material or whatever they're doing, is pretty astronomical. It's a lot of people, and I I've traveled a lot, but I live in a very beautiful little town in Southern Oregon, and so being able to connect with this many people from all over the world artistically and share ideas and you know, each other's work and talk about what moves us, what makes us uncomfortable, what makes us nervous is really an incredible thing. And it wasn't really, it wasn't until the advent of these online programs that I was able to network in that way with all of you. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I think that you'll find, if you've ever been part of an artistic community, we have a rich community here in town, but it's small. And because people tend to move to places where they have, they're kind of like-minded individuals, you get a certain perspective. But when we break it out into the international world, we get all kinds of different energies and perspectives, and it makes the art and the process so much richer. And I know that I've grown tremendously through that process. So that being said, let's get started with. Let me pull this up really quick, if I can. Forgive me. I've been doing this now on my own for for over 5 years. And then coming up on 8 years, I was an online coach with another artist, Nicholas Wilton, for 3 years before that. And I still get lost on the stupid computer. Because when it comes down to it, I am first and foremost an artist. And it looks like I'm a talking head, but I'm really just an artist. All right, so let's share the screen. Let's see what we can get here. There we go. 1, 2, and 3. Sorry about this, little lag. Where's my Zoom? And share. There we go. Okay. Can you all see this? Is that up, Dave? All right, wonderful. Okay, so we're going to start. This is a Masterson palette. I don't make any money off Masterson, but I just love these things. It's got it's plastic with this sealable lid. You can get them at most art stores, but I don't think that everyone realizes how amazing they are when you're working with acrylics. Usually using I like to use some kind of lubricant on the edges of it. Not an oil-based one because it'll erode it, but that way you can get a really nice seal. But this acrylic here, this is a 3-day workshop, right? And we've had a day in between. We've had a day in between, and all of these paints are still fairly wet. I have a couple of pieces of paper towel down below, and then I use what do I use? Parchment paper, thin, cheap parchment paper, so that the moisture permeates the underside of the acrylic. And before that, when I was using acrylic, it would dry on me so quickly, and I just, I hated it because I didn't think acrylic was worth painting if it's going to dry that quick, coming from oils. But once I got a nice Masterson box, it changed my game. So today we're going to slow it down a little bit, and you'll notice that I'm going to be a little bit more methodical in my approach to this work. And the reason for that is because when we're finalizing what we want to say with our brush work, instead of coloring in and hammering it out, I like to work in the entirety of the composition, and you'll see that I move around this composition the whole time. But I'm not busily trying to cover up everything. And I know a lot of you ran into that during the course, where we started with this lush playground, and there was all these possibilities and things going on, and then we got into kind of that mode of, all right, now let's make the painting. And it's easy to cover everything up and lose track of some of the spontaneity below. And so, the final stages, and Nick, I know you asked this question in the feed about, if I'm going to be using a little brush and doing some details, how do I approach that? And the answer is not more little brushes or little brush details. It's a more thoughtful kind of approach. So as I am painting, you can see I'm actually mixing these values based on what I'm seeing in the bouquet. So I'm being pretty accurate at this point, and that's why it slows down. I test the color to see if it works, and if it works, I apply it, and I look for places that it might go well. But I'm being a little bit more sculptural and intentional about the painting at this stage. And that can throw us off sometimes when we're getting started out. You know, I've heard from a lot of students, oh, I could never do that. I'm much more spontaneous or intuitive, or when I try to paint, I just get mud. You know, there's all these reasons that it might not work out, but they are surmountable reasons. So as you are moving forward with your work, know that the answers are available, and I have many of them, and I'm happy to share as much as I can with you. But right now, I'm just building out some of these flowers because I want there to be this juxtaposition between the big abstract shape, which is full and dynamic and fun, and then I come from a realistic background, so I want some of these flowers to feel like flowers. I want you to be able to identify them. You might even be able to identify what kind of flower it is. And that's important to me. I don't want it to just be chaos, although some of the posts on the feed, you know, I think you could stop. There's a few of you who have just taken a playground and cut it out into a bouquet, and it looks just beautiful. It's stunning. So I think that it's important for us to recognize that you know, magic can strike at any stage in the game, and even though we have maybe an idea around where we think we are headed, you might arrive sooner than you think. And I think that this process of creating using playground and call and response with color and texture really kind of expedites that. It makes it more possible. We can arrive because of what's there on the panel before maybe we would have if we had just been coloring it in. A lot of times when I was getting started, I would start from one corner of a painting with a careful drawing, and I would just start painting in the details, almost like a color by number. And you know, that can work, but what you don't get is a sense of the whole. You don't get a sense of the bigger idea, the bigger composition. And so as I'm making adjustments here, even though it's going slow, I'm looking for highlights. I'm looking for shadows. I'm looking for if say see this upper right area is kind of lighter, maybe I can bring some of those lights into the lower area. Even a little mark like that starts to echo all of the brightness that's going on above. And this is something that you want to continually think about as you're creating a composition is, am I balancing it? And I don't mean symmetrically. I just mean, if there's some light over here, is there any light over here? Is there an opportunity for the eye to go there? And the way we do that is through contrast and detail. So that's what I'm looking for, pushing maybe little bits of contrast, looking for details, looking for ways of moving the eye around the composition. Here I'm being pretty intentional, right? I'm just adding a little bit of color because I like that playground underneath. And we talk about this a lot in the full course, but this idea that if it's already kind of the right value, the right light or dark, we might be able to leave it. It may hold. It may be what it needs to be already. We don't have to add a lot. And when we want to make transitions between some of these realistic marks, these solid kind of opaque marks, and the playground, we can come in with something maybe between those. So So if you're let's see what we get here. Take a sip. See that mark merges the dark background with the richness of the red. It doesn't have to be this clean cutout. There's places where some of the background can merge into the foreground. And so the idea of what are we doing with these little brushes and these details, it's not necessarily that we're trying to get everything right. We're looking for places where we might be able to harmonize by bringing colors together or draw the eye over to a different part of the composition. It's about balance, and I'm working the whole painting basically the whole time rather than focusing on one specific thing. I might work on a blossom for a little bit, but keeping in mind the entirety of the composition. That's what this is about. And I did do some adjustments for you as well. So when we get to that, I think it'll really send home this idea of composition rather than detail. Oops. So I don't know how far I want to take this. I mean, I think it's pretty close. I'm going to, add a few more marks, but basically I want to keep that raw energy, the vitality, and bring in some of this finish and this structure. And this last part of the demonstration here, we're not making a lot of progress, just little nuances. You can see how that little highlight echoes that big batch of white over on the other side. I'm looking for ways of creating balance in the work. That little sharp tip brings our eye up from down below, and we're creating energy that way. Like I said, detail and contrast are where we find the most that's where our eye is going to go. So when we add these little details, we're inviting the viewer to go there and to enjoy that process with us. And also by adding little bits of painted detail on the top, it kind of echoes the crazy texture underneath. So if you have a lot of maybe spatters or brush strokes or contrast underneath, bringing some of that over the top can help unify the feeling throughout. Okay, I think that's going to take us where we need to be. All right. Okay. So that's that. That's kind of where we're at with the floral right now, and I'm going to jump into some of your demo requests. Beautiful paintings. I didn't get to them all by any means, but I grabbed a couple, and so let's jump into that right now. I'll share this screen here really quick.
Hey, Gabriel, a couple questions regarding your painting you were just working on.
Sure.
One was from Cindy Jones, and she's asked, "Are you putting in the berries?" And then Edith asked, "How do you know when to stop with the details?"
Right.
So
Okay, those are two good questions. The berries are very seductive. I don't have any clean representation of the berries, and the reason for that is because I really like this area here. I like the spontaneity of that. So I had to ask myself, what am I willing to keep visually? Not because it's in the reference, not because or even I might like it in the reference. I have to separate myself from that reference a little bit. And one of the things that I would suggest maybe at the end of your process is to get rid of your reference completely. Stop looking at the reference and start looking at the painting as a whole and see how it reads on its own. Because at the end of the day, the reference doesn't matter, right? We don't see that. We see the painting. That's the finished version of what this expression is. And so in my case, there's a little allusion to berries, but it's not too much. Okay, so let's share this. Oh, and then the other question was, when do I stop? That's kind of the same answer. The berries, and also I stop when I feel like, this is going to sound weird, when I feel like it's finished. And I've learned that I need to stop before. There's going to be a time as an artist when you're feeling really good about the work. And some of you even landed on that moment with your posts. So you may have asked for an adjustment from me, but at some point you took a picture and you said, I feel really good about this. I know it needs work, it needs to keep going, but I feel good about it. And that point in our artistic process is a pretty interesting one, because sometimes our intuition picks up on how beautiful something is before our critical mind can. And the more we exercise some of these techniques like composition and work with these ideas of light and dark and color and shape, you know, with instruction, it definitely helps. But the more refined you get at seeing, the easier it is for you to pick up, maybe even subconsciously, on where it might be a good place to at least give it a rest, and then come in slower, come in with more methodically. Because there's usually a place before we think we're there, when it still has all that energy, it still has all of that electricity, and many of us tend to go past that and get careful and clinical before, maybe after the point that we should. Okay, so let's jump into this and talk about some of these pieces, these beautiful pieces. Let's share my screen. Okay. There we go. Okay. Everyone see that? Wonderful. Okay. Abstracting the floral student adjustments. Let's get into this. So this is Judith's piece, and Judith, you mentioned when you were in your kind of question that you'd lightened a lot of it, which I really do like. I like the lightness of this. So you'd lightened a lot of it, but then it felt like this. You had this bullseye, or this subject right in the center, and this can happen a lot for us. When we are, especially when we're choosing a subject, we tend to put it right in the middle. And if you've painted for a while before you recognize that, before you realize that you have this bullseye, it can be tricky, because how can we can't take our eye off of that center. It's already painted. But you can change the symmetry of the composition. So I did bring it a little bit more dark back in, but look what happens to our composition with a little bit of an adjustment. Now, yes, there's some centered things, but this is up here, and very clearly so, because it's surrounded with these darks. This is down here, and very clearly so, because it's surrounded with these darks. This is, you know, by itself, it feels pretty pronounced. This brings a lot of weight. There's contrast and detail, and I've created a little bit more depth in the flowers, but for the most part, I haven't messed with the bouquet of flowers that much. What I've done is I've gone back to that idea. Remember when we were doing this black and white design? I've gone back to that idea of design. Oops. So instead of fixating on this, now the eye is going over here into this high contrast area. It's going over here. It's taking a journey down here. It's echoed in this darkness here. And it's, you know, it definitely allows us to move around the entirety of the composition. Now, another thing you could do there, Judith, if you wanted to go lighter, is you could maybe lighten some of these darker areas. And go with an overall light painting. I'm not suggesting that the answers always go darker, although I tend to do a lot of that. But it could be something as simple as that. It's just about breaking up the symmetry. This is Penny's, and Penny, first of all, at this stage, it has so much vitality and so much life, and I really like it. For those of us who paint or have painted realistically in the past, and maybe Penny, I don't know, maybe you do a bit of that. This can feel daunting to say, I'm done, you know, when there's so little really painted. But it is very beautiful. It's very expressionistic. It's very impressionistic. And I like how light it is. One of the things that did capture me, and I riffed on it, was this little bit here. You've got this little bit of black. And this is a fairly centered piece as well, with this little bit of black here, a little bit of dark here, some here, a little bit over there. And I love this. I like how the austerity of this intense black kind of makes all of this feel so pastel. So I went with that a little bit more. And I just pushed some of the darks a little bit. And you can see that just by adding a little bit, and this could even be achieved with the glaze. We'll talk about all of that in the big workshop. Notice how your eye starts to move around. Oops, really move around. Now, instead of this being the only point of most contrast, we're going here, we're going over here, we're going here, we're going up here. It's pretty exciting. And I think that I've managed to maintain enough of that lightness and that openness and that airiness. I haven't killed it. It's just letting your eye move around a little bit more. Now, if you wanted to get heavy-handed with this, I looked at your reference, the bouquet, Penny, and I noticed that there were a lot of darks within it, where the stems were going this way and that. And that could be fun too. So this is a much more kind of bold, aggressive approach to that same design. And it can be nice too. If you like this airy spring feeling, which I do, this might be as far as you want to take it. But you could also really capture the energetic aspect of it just by pushing that contrast even further. And you also notice how with all of these darks over here, the kind of centered symmetry of this goes away now. Now we have this happening over here, we have this happening over here, little echoes of it up here, and it's a completely different experience. And this is what you get to choose and tune into for yourselves. How do you feel about the painting, the experience of these flowers? Do you want to convey something that's open and airy? Do you want to give it some weight? Those are the kind of lessons that we get into and talk about, because at the end of the day, if we're not conveying how we feel about our flowers or whatever subject we're painting, we're really missing out. Especially in this day and age when you know there's so many photographs out there, things can be reproduced, and what we have to offer is powerful and potent, but what we are offering is us and our experience. This is Little Brambles. So if you're here, Little Brambles, would you be willing to unmute yourself so I can get your name? I mean, you don't have to, you can just say your first name or whatever, but I'd love to know who you are. Little Brambles on Facebook. We'll find out. Anyway, Little Brambles did this very aggressive, brushy, heavy-handed work, and I love it. I love the energy of this. I mean, for us painters, when you paint like this, it's surprising. We step back and we go, oh, that hits in a different way than our realistic renderings and our special petals. I really like that. But I didn't want everyone to think that the only thing that we're doing here is cutting out backgrounds and doing it with black or purple. So moving forward, this is a drastic change up, and I'm not suggesting that you have to do this, Little Brambles, but I just wanted to, for everybody, I wanted to demonstrate opportunities for variety. So what if, instead of going with dark to isolate our colors, we went with light, for example, and created something completely different? The other thing that I did here is I went in with some details. They aren't details that are conveying accuracy. They're just see these little bits that were coming through in the playground I loved. So having some little bits on top really fire it up. This reminds me, maybe it has kind of a little bit of a Basquiat feeling here. New York painter, more graffiti style, but but just showing you that you could take it into a completely different direction and it would still have the integrity of that original luster, just in a different way. There's some soft open spaces. There's some little bits of detail. I even, went with some really tiny little bits of detail just for variety. But for the most part, this is a big design. It's still got its original juice, and I'm just making little tweaks on it. And this is Cheryl's. Cheryl, you were saying, is it too much? Well, the questions were, am I stuck? Is it too much? Have I gone too far? I'm not sure exactly verbatim, but that was kind of the idea. It's very bold, lots of rich color. It's beautiful. It's got a lot going on. What I ran across right away in this design was all of this energy up here, right? But then we have this color, and we talk about color a lot in this workshop too, but this color is so bold, and this shape is so bold. It's almost, what are we looking at? Are we looking at this, or are we looking at this? And I would say almost both equally. This one has a lot of contrast and detail. This one also has a lot of contrast and hard edges, so it creates the feeling of a lot of detail too. And it divides this piece in half. So there's a sense of kind of dualistic composition here, a dualism. This part here, hard shapes, lots of contrast, bold yellow. And then this part here, lots of contrast, rich colors, complementary colors, which like red and green are complementary because green is yellow and blue, red, yellow, and blue are the primary, and if you have the opposites, yellow and blue over here, red, you get complementary. So they vibrate. So there's a lot of vibration up here, and then there's this purple against yellow vibrating down here, and it's almost like it's competing with itself. So what I did here was I made the adjustment to create some asymmetry and make this feel bigger and this feel a bit smaller. And if you squint your eyes down, you can really see how instead of it being divided in half, the composition is now, majority of it is this big dark shape here with these bold splashes of color, and I even included some bold splashes in the darks too. And then the design of the vase is cut in half. So instead of this being centered on the composition, even though it's still in the same place, through design, we can move the composition. So here's this pot right in the middle, but the design is making it off-center, right? This contrast over here is creating some off-center design in the composition. Oops. And then just using some heavy black to make these colors pop even more. And breaking the edges, letting some of the design go right off the edge to make this feel bigger. And this is Linda's. And Linda, you asked, am I done or should I wait it more? This question, Linda, is why this is on here. I don't even have an adjustment for you. We'll do that in real time. You said, am I done, or could I weight it more? Does it need to be more weighted? And I love questions like that because the answer is in the question. I think you felt like this was maybe centered. The flowers are here. What's going on? So what happens, for those of you who don't know what weighting it more means, it means more maybe contrast or heaviness toward the bottom of a composition, which grounds it. It gives it the sense of gravity. We live in a world where things tend to sit on the ground and they cast shadows, and that area can be heavier. You can feel heavier. So just going through this and adding some weight, as you suggested, Linda, to this lower area achieves a couple of different things. But one of the things that it does is our eye starts to connect all of these darks with these darks up here. And instead of this feeling centered, where our eye's going here now and connecting it. It's almost like it's reading this as a larger shape with these light elements over the top. And it grounds it and it gives more weight to this part of it. This is more open and airy. You could even push that idea further, I suppose. This is going to be a strange way of doing it, but you could even go lighter at the top, for example. See how when I add that light over there, these light shapes connect to it. It starts to become a larger shape. Our eye wants to connect things. So I'm just riffing right now, but this is kind of a way of opening up the design and creating asymmetry in an otherwise centered and symmetrical design. Okay. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the adjustments. Thank you everyone for your contributions. That was wonderful. Let me pull you all up here. And I want to talk to you a little bit about my course. The Abstracting the Floral course is officially open for enrollment today. And it's a 4-week course with a similar format to what we have here, where except so there's an introduction, not today because I wanted to come to you directly, but each week I roll out a whole bunch of recorded material that you can go through as your schedule allows, and I go step by step through a lot of different approaches to both design, color, and art in general. And one of the things I'm really proud of in this specific course is I give you some shortcuts and some ways of seeing that allow you to create things with some accuracy without having to go through the arduous task of learning to draw academically. I went through it in a whole academic school, and at the end of the day, what I realized was I didn't have to go that far down that rabbit hole. And I could have saved myself a lot of grief if I just picked up some more basic techniques, like comparing where one object is to another in relationship, maybe vertically or horizontally. So I get into that a lot too. But a lot of this has to do with design and composition, and that's what you got to see in this workshop, is that even in these adjustments today, I wasn't fixated on the details of every rose. I was fixated on how to create a great painting. And at the end of the day, when we're painting and someone walks into the gallery or our studio or wherever we might be, they take it in as a whole. They might get up to it and say, wow, you really nailed those designs, that detail, that nuance. And that's wonderful. And you can add elements of that in your composition. But overall, they want to see what your statement is, what your design is about, because that's a good design makes a great painting. There can be very realistic paintings that are poorly designed, and they are not going to live very long on the wall. There can be some poorly drawn paintings, some less realistic paintings with good design, and they tend to be stronger. So all of the realism in the world can't save us from design, and that's why the two need to coexist. And I'm not against realism, believe me. I've spent a lot of time there, but that's what this is. There is an emphasis here on merging spontaneity, your emotion, your feelings with your subject, and being able to reflect on both. That's what this course is about. So I drop these lessons that you get to go with throughout the week, and then you can even submit some of your work if that feels appropriate, and I can do adjustments like I just did today on your work. I will also, and that's every Friday, just like today is Friday. We would meet at 10:30 Pacific for an hour and a half. These calls are an hour and a half, and we go through everything from the week. And you are welcome to ask questions and make comments. And of course, you've also posted your work, so I've seen that. It's a pretty intimate environment, and I'm proud of how it's set up. So this is 4 intensive weeks, and I can tell you right now that it is 4 weeks, but it's probably more. There's a lot of content there, and that's why you have access to the entire course for a year. I mean, some people steamroll through it all 4 weeks, hammer it out, get an A plus, but then they do generally come back and revisit it again. There's a lot of content there. It's helpful to be able to go through it at your leisure and at your pace. And especially for those of you down under, 3 in the morning isn't very practical sometimes for the calls, so they are all recorded, and you can ask your questions in advance, post your work, ask your questions, and I will answer those questions on the Q&A. So even if you can't make the Q&A, you can ask your question, and that's important. Let's see, what else?
I have a question for you, Gabe.
Oh, sure.
From somebody in the chat here, Karen. It's a good one. She says, my subject matter that I like to paint is not flowers. Do you think the course would be relevant? Would the principles apply?
Oh, that is a good one. Thank you, Karen. So yes, my subject matter, believe it or not, is not flowers either. And what happened for me was I'm a figurative artist. I love to paint the figure. I do figures, landscapes, portraits, multiple figures. I've done a lot of narrative paintings that tell stories. So why abstracting the floral? What I realized, well, what happened, it kind of happened all at once. I had a show that was due to be put up on the wall, and someone sent me this beautiful bouquet of flowers for the show. And it was large, it was very opulent, beautiful bouquet. And it was, I don't know, it was probably 8:30, 9 p.m. I was scrambling to get the show done, and I was working on all the little show cards to have them up on the wall. And I looked at that bouquet, and I had this big 24 by 24 playground sitting in the studio that I hadn't done anything with. And I looked at that bouquet, and I said, this bouquet is going to be here for maybe, what, 1 or 2 more days? And I'm going to paint that. So 2:30 came around, 2:30 a.m., and I was done with that painting. And it was beautiful. And I had a frame, so I put it in a frame, and I put it on the wall for the show the next morning. And I was really enamored by that painting because it was flowers, and I wasn't expecting to do flowers. I was enamored with the process and the race that these flowers were living in front of me, and I was watching them as they were falling past their prime, and they were more and more interesting and more beautiful. And that's why this course, besides, of course, Lou's suggestion, that's why this course exists, because I fell in love with this process, and I think that flowers are just spectacular in a very unique way. It's similar, for me, to painting like a figure in front of me. A beautiful woman, for example, sits right in front of you. They're alive, they're moving, they're breathing. There's no time. You have to record what's there. That's incredible. And then it's gone. It's fleeting. And the floral bouquet is the same way. It forces us to show up at 110%. And I love that. My stepmother passed away suddenly some years back, and that floral bouquet painting was at her memorial. And that really solidified it for me. It's in my father's house now on his wall. They have something that tells a story that is kind of ineffable. We can't put our finger on what it is that a flower says, but we know it's saying something. And that's the long answer. That's why I paint flowers. They're beautiful, and they're worth recording.
We got a couple more questions here for you.
Oh, okay.
Diana asks, could I do this course with soft pastels? Currently, I don't paint in acrylic oil.
You absolutely can do this class with soft pastels. I mean, the only thing that I would say is that with soft pastels, the playground element is going to be interesting for you, because you're going to have to be able to layer some of those soft pastels, with some opacity over some maybe lighter drawn chaos underneath, but you can do that. A good portion of this course, though, is really about design and call and response. Where things are placed, how are they placed. We get into memory and how we recall. So you might look at a bouquet and then look away, kind of thing. So there's a lot of different exercises that you may or may not have tried as an artist that should really strengthen your perception and your ability to process. And again, the whole time you have flowers in your home, so that it's a win, triple win. But yes, you could do it with pastels. I will say, even I would. This is going to sound crazy. I started with watercolor. I've done gouache. I spent most of my career in oil, and then I came to acrylic, and I despised acrylics. They were clumsy and dried too fast, and I thought they were for amateurs. And then I realized what a gift that was. This fast drying application, the fact that you could experiment and play and then play again is really pretty wonderful. So as a learning tool for a student, I think acrylics are great. And at this point in my career, I start most of my paintings in acrylic and take them as far as I feel I can go in acrylic. Sometimes that's to completion, but then I'll go back in with oil to make them, a little bit more accurate or bring in some opacity. But anyway, I'd suggest that you can do it, and also that you should have a set of at least primary color or acrylics in the house, just because it's fun. But don't let me tell you what to do. All right, was there another one, Dave?
Yeah, it's on the similar line. Someone,
Okay.
Caroline was asking about, or I'm sorry, Becky was asking about watercolor, but I believe it.
Oh, got it. So with watercolor, again, the difficulty with watercolor would be in layering, right? Because watercolor, if you want white, you tend to leave it. You tend to leave those open spaces open. So you can do that, but you could also introduce maybe some opaque gouache or something like that over the top, so that you have the spontaneity and crazy of the watercolor and the blooms that you can get and all those wonderful things, and then something a little bit more direct over the top. I know that some people think that that's cheating, and maybe in the watercolor society, but Winslow Homer used opaque color every once in a while, and he was okay. So I feel like you get a pass there. Don, you have fuchsia behind you? I have a wall like that. Oh, and stripes? All right, all right. Yeah, yeah. I love this. I love seeing you all, but Don, you're looking very artistic, I got to tell you. Okay, I think that's kind of a wrap. I just wanted to encourage you to go. The link to the full course is on this page. If you scroll to the bottom, you can learn more about it. I hope to see you there. It's an incredible course. And before I leave, I just want to leave you with this. A lot of us as artists stumble through or struggle with or feel maybe like we're not going to arrive. And I know that that has been true for me. I've had a lot of time in this game. I've been painting ever since I was in high school, believe it or not, and I've been painting full-time as an artist since I was 25. And during that time, you would think, well, then he's figured it out. And I feel like in many ways I have. But it took me a long time. And I don't feel like it needed to take that long, especially if you think about what we've learned in the course of the last 3 days. If you've had some epiphanies or maybe some takeaways in the last 3 days, multiply that by 4 weeks of intensive study. You can springboard your experience. You don't have to stay stuck if you feel that way. You can learn something, and you can kind of transcend where you are. So if you have always thought of yourself maybe as someone who is amateurish, or maybe you don't ever even consider having a show, but then many of my students have had even solo shows and sold their work and had really wonderful experiences when they allowed themselves to lean in and become the artists that they wanted to be, rather than the artists that maybe they had labeled themselves. And that's what this is about. And also, speaking of which, just to my students, this is specifically for you, Sharon. I just want you to know that some of my students have been with me for so long and continue to show up for me, Betsy. And I really appreciate it. And so there is a really powerful community here. And Sharon, other Sharon, Mom's iPad Sharon. Uh, I appreciate you all, and I just I want you to know that it means a lot to me that you're continually here and you got my back, and we've created a lot of beautiful things together. So jump into this course. I hope to see you there. It's going to be an incredible 4 weeks. Again, you have all the material for a year. You're going to have a community nowhere near as big as 4,000 people. But it's going to be a good, strong community, and we're going to learn a lot together and have an amazing time. Plus, flowers are in season for most of us in the Northern Hemisphere right now, so it's a great time to indulge. And then even in the Southern Hemisphere, I believe a lot of you just have great flower growing weather. So much love to you all, and hope to see you soon.